Welcome, everybody, to the John Taylor celebration. I can't find Taylor. Where did he go? There's the man. As a co-organizer with Mike Bordeaux, there's Mike Bordeaux. I get to be the first to say thank you, John, and congratulations. This is a wonderful event. I want to say thank you, of course, to all the wonderful Hoover staff who did almost all the work, especially Marie-Christine Slakey. Marie-Christine, wave hi. See, she's working already back there, who did really the hard work. Rules of the game. Everybody who's on the program, watch the time. Please start on time, end on time, so that everybody gets a chance. We will have Q&A, but it doesn't have to be a question. It's okay to just offer some remarks. Moderators, help us get all of that going. When you say something, please identify yourself. We're keeping a transcript, and it's awfully nice not to have to spend weeks saying, now, who was that who said, oh, John, I love you? Well, we all love John, so how do I know who said that? So please identify yourself. We're going to get going with a few opening remarks by our university president and ex-economist, well, ex-member of the economics department, still an economist. Sorry about that, John. John Levin, please.
All right, thank you, John, and welcome to everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many friends here to celebrate John Taylor. Welcome to the Taylor family. Thank you to the Hoover Institution for organizing this event. We're going to hear a lot this afternoon about John's research contributions and his legacy in monetary policy and macroeconomics, so I wanted to open with a few words about John's many years at Stanford. John first came to Stanford as a PhD student in the economics department in the late 1960s, early 1970s. His advisor was the great statistician and econometrician Ted Anderson, and some of John's earliest work was on econometrics and statistical properties of dynamic economic models. We sent John off to Columbia and then to his undergraduate institution, Princeton, where he established himself, as you'll hear soon, as one of the leaders in macroeconomics, doing his work on rational expectations and then providing the foundations for new Keynesian models with the development of the staggered wage setting model. And then happily, we brought John back to Stanford in 1984. And so he has now been on the Stanford faculty for more than 40 years, as a pillar of the economics department, the Hoover Institution, and the university. And in addition to his extraordinary stature in monetary economics and policy. So when I was preparing these remarks, I tried to recall the first time I met John, and I somehow had a memory of first meeting him and Michael Boskin in Washington in an elevator in the old executive office building, and that they had both been very gracious to me at the time. And that kind of made sense because when I was an undergraduate at Stanford, I had spent a quarter in Washington at the Stanford and Washington program, and I had been an intern at the Council of Economic Advisors. And that was where John and Michael were both members of the council. And it was around the same time. But then last night, as I went to verify that story, I realized that it might have just materialized in my mind because by the time I got there, John had actually returned to Stanford. So either John was there visiting at the tail end of the Bush administration, which is very possible, or Michael loomed so large in my mind that he had just sort of split into two people and made a big impact on me. But in any event, the one reason the memory sort of made sense was because as I later came to appreciate, John was unfailingly kind to Stanford undergraduates. And in fact, when he returned to Stanford from being at the council in the 1990s, John built a major teaching center at Stanford in introductory economics. John taught thousands, probably tens of thousands of Stanford freshmen to love economics and to love markets. He was famous for dressing up every year as a raisin. There was a economic point about raisins, something I think about agricultural markets and so forth. But mostly everyone just remembered that he dressed up in a raisin costume and looked forward to that all quarter in his Econ 1 class. And he also advised dozens of undergraduates and undergraduate theses. And actually quite a number of his students went on to become professional economists or to the great success in the public and private sector. Of course, as you're going to hear later today, John's also deeply respected here on campus and elsewhere as a scholar and policymaker. I would say that John's development of the Taylor rule is, would be probably in my top 5 contributions in the field of economics in terms of the impact that someone has had on practice of policy, maybe up there with Black-Scholes, and I'm not quite sure what else is in that top 5, but truly extraordinary contribution for any economist. And his contributions to public service through the CEA, his time as Undersecretary of the U.S. Treasury for International Affairs, as a member of many advisory committees at the state and federal level, are equally laudable and meritorious. And finally, John has been an exceptional colleague to me and to many others here at Stanford. When I returned to Stanford in the summer of 2000 to join the Stanford economics faculty, John was already at that time very firmly established as one of the most distinguished professors in the economics profession, and of course, here on campus. And what I discovered very quickly and happily was it turned out that just as it was true with the Stanford students, John was unfailingly kind to young members of the Stanford faculty. And John and Leland had Amy and I over almost right when we arrived to their house for dinner. Leland, of course, was a dynamo in her own right. I spent many years with her on the Stanford Homeowners Board. And it was immediately clear just from the first month that I had at Stanford that John was someone who was going to be kind and generous and supportive. And indeed, he has been for 25 years. John can be very opinionated sometimes about monetary policy. He's not afraid to mix it up. I don't doubt that some of you in this room have been on the other side of him on the occasional debate about government bailouts or interest rates or other aspects of policy, where John has thought deeply and has a lot of conviction and expertise. But as a colleague, John is also someone who was a great listener, someone who had wisdom and experience, someone who would always step up to help, someone who loved Stanford and wanted to see the institution and our students thrive. When I was the economics department chair, we had a lot of characters in the economics department, and I would, yes, including some people in this room, and and sometimes I would have to go make the rounds of the department to sort of line up a meeting or a vote or something we were trying to do. And there were some offices that I would sort of pause outside and have to sort of steel myself before I walked in because I knew that it was going to be a fierce debate. By the way, I kind of look forward to those. But I always really look forward to walking into John's office. And the reason I did that is because he would always have questions. He would have insights about things. He always wanted to, think hard about things. But at the end of the day, he always wanted to know what was going to be best for the department and for the university, and how could he help make that happen. And he's just a great colleague. And I think that's why he has so many people who've worked with him over the years who have just come to admire him in a very deep way and respect him and befriend him, and not just for his scholarship, but for his character and his integrity. So thank you all for being here today to celebrate John and John's legacy.